On the broadcast tonight, President Park Geun-hye presides over a meeting with government officials and business representatives on national television to draw up measures for drastic regulatory reforms. The new U.S. Fed chief hints at a sooner-than-expected rate hike, jolting markets all across the globe. And a possible breakthrough in the search for now more than 12 days missing Malaysia Airlines plane. Australia has spotted potentially significant objects in the Indian Ocean. This is Early Edition at 6.
당신의 유럽은 어디였나요?
Excellence in flight. Korean Air.
It is 5 a.m. in New York, 11 in Crimea, and 6 on a Thursday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Conn-young.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us.
In her second year in office, President Park Geun-hye has at times used very strong words to express her intention to implement major regulatory reforms. And on this Thursday, she presided over a televised debate on deregulation with government officials and some 60 representatives from the private sector in attendance.
Let us now connect live to our presidential correspondent Choi You-sun for details on today's meeting. You-sun?
Guys, in her opening remarks, President Park highlighted how sweeping regulatory reforms would be the key to encouraging businesses to innovate and actively invest, ultimately leading to job creation. Referring to a recent Korean drama that became a hit in China, the president said overseas fans cannot buy the fashion products that seen in dramas because they don't have the unique electronic identification certification required for online transactions in Korea. The president then called for government employees to be more proactive in regulatory reforms, proposing an evaluation system where they would be rewarded for their deregulation initiatives. She also asked for a balance between easing unnecessary regulations and boosting the ones required in the areas of welfare, the environment, and personal information protection.
Now, You-sun, what were some of the concerns raised by representatives from the participating businesses?
Well, the country's business leaders talked about how oftentimes a regulation is handled by more than one ministry, which hampers new business projects that can revitalize the economy. They said there should be a system where the ministries can communicate to resolve regulation issues. The corporate community also asked for a negative regulation system and post-regulations, which they say will lead to more innovation and initiatives by businesses.
Now, I also understand the government also reported to the president a set of deregulatory measures, right?
You're right. The government has pledged to wipe out more than 2,000 economic regulations by 2016, bringing down the volume of registered regulations to 80% of the current level. The government also hopes to complete 10% of the reduction by the end of this year. And a regulatory control system adopted from the British model will be implemented next year. The system would automatically rid the system of existing regulations upon the introduction of new ones to ensure there's no additional cost to the public and businesses. Guys?
All right, You-sun, thank you for that. That was our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun on President Park Geun-hye's push for regulatory reforms and a meeting on deregulation at the presidential office on this Thursday. Now moving on, Korean doctors have called off a nationwide strike planned for next week.
The Korean Medical Association said it will accept a tentative agreement reached with the government on contentious medical policies after a vote held this morning. The KMA said that of the 41,000 members that participated in the balloting, over 62% voted to accept the deal, which includes a plan to carry out a trial run of a controversial telemedicine system and allow hospitals to build for-profit subsidiaries, along with other revisions to medical policy. The planned 6-day strike was to start next Monday and followed a 1-day doctor strike earlier this month.
President Park Geun-hye will hold talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping next Monday on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. This is according to China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hong Lei earlier this Thursday. Now, she was answering reporters' questions on with which leaders President Xi will be sitting down with in The Hague next week. Now, this will be the third summit between Presidents Park and Xi. They last met in October on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in Bali. Meanwhile, there is rising speculation the leaders of Korea, the United States, and Japan will meet on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague next week. If the trilateral summit does take place, it will be the first time President Park Geun-hye will meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe since taking office. Arirang News Foreign Affairs correspondent Hwang Sang-hee reports.
It's looking increasingly likely that President Park Geun-hye will meet with their Japanese counterpart in what will be the first official meeting between the two since she took office last year. The meeting would take place as part of a trilateral summit with the United States on the sidelines of next week's Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. President Park has thus far refused to sit down with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, criticizing him for his distorted perception of history. But Abe's recent stream of conciliatory gestures has put the ball in President Park's court. Last week, the Japanese leader stated his administration will uphold a landmark apology issued to the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement. Just days later, Abe called South Korea Japan's most important neighboring country and expressed his hope that the two could build a future-oriented relationship at the upcoming meeting in the Netherlands. The Japanese government has also reportedly postponed announcing the results of its annual textbook screening to early April from March 26th. The event usually angers South Korea, which argues Japan is trying to cover up its wartime crimes and making unjustified territorial claims over the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island. Sources in Seoul say that Tokyo's actions may not be enough for a bilateral summit, but that the two could meet in the presence of the U.S. The presidential office of Cheongwade is reportedly reviewing whether to say yes to the trilateral summit next week. If the talks do take place, the three leaders will likely discuss North Korea's nuclear program and regional issues of mutual interest. As willing as the two neighbors may be to patch up their differences, they're also under pressure from Washington, who wants its two main allies in Northeast Asia to mend ties before President Barack Obama visits the region next month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea and Japan have agreed to resume stalled government talks. The decision came Thursday after a 2-day informal meeting between Red Cross and government officials from both countries. Speaking at a press conference, an official from Japan's foreign ministry said the two governments had come to an agreement on holding formal bilateral meetings, but not much else. The talks will likely center on repatriating the remains of Japanese nationals who died in North Korea during World War II. They'll be the first government-level discussions between North Korea and Japan since 2012, when talks were scrapped after Pyongyang launched a long-range rocket.
Now, is it a breakthrough in the missing Malaysia Airlines plane situation? Now, Australia's Prime Minister announced earlier in the day that two objects spotted in the Indian Ocean may be related to the Malaysian airliner that vanished nearly 2 weeks ago.
Well, the objects are said to be rather large, and if confirmed, it would represent the first major breakthrough in the mystery surrounding Flight 370. Our Connie Lee has the details.
It's a new lead in the hunt for missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370.
Australian authorities say that 2 objects spotted in the southern Indian Ocean on Thursday could be related to the missing airliner.
Following specialist analysis of this satellite imagery, 2 possible objects related to the search have been identified.
According to satellite images, the objects were found about 2,300 kilometers away from Australia's city of Perth in the Indian Ocean.
And we must keep this in mind. The task of locating these objects will be extremely difficult, and it may turn out that they are not related to the search for flight MH370.
To confirm the objects, 4 military planes have been dispatched to the area, along with 6 Malaysian Navy ships and 3 helicopters. The objects are reportedly large in size, with the largest being about 24 meters long.
Every lead is a hope, and we have been very consistent. We want to verify, we want to corroborate. We're in the process of verifying and corroborating the information.
The Boeing 777 went missing in the early hours of March 8th, and the families of the Chinese passengers on that plane have been waiting now for nearly 2 weeks for answers. Their impatience and anger are growing.
I'm telling you, from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you all knew where that plane was. Now you also know where it is. You're cheating us family members.
The Malaysian airliner, with 239 people on board, was headed to Beijing from Malaysia when it disappeared. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
So it has been more than 12 days since Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 went missing, and hard facts about its fate remain in short supply.
And to help us fill the vacuum, we are joined live in the studio by John An, Professor of Aerospace Engineering at Seoul-based Sejong University. Professor An, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Good evening. Yeah.
Now, first off, we just saw that report. Could this possible discovery of objects in the South Indian Ocean be a breakthrough in the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines MH370?
Oh, okay. The Australians reported that they have found some objects in the Indian Ocean, but the problem is due to the resolution of the satellite images, it could be possibly the debris or not. So checking the debris by human itself, then it will be possible to see what it is. Yeah.
Well, many people are frustrated and angry about how slowly things have been proceeding. What's the main reason for the delay and the inability to find out what happened? We just have a lot of ifs and buts and whys and what ifs.
Oh, yeah. From all the evidences that has been released up to now, it's more likely that Malaysian airline MH370 might have flown to the middle of Indian Ocean, where there's not much civilian or military activities, and that means there's no need to watch out carefully. That is, no satellite records, no radar tracking data, and so on. So basically, nobody cares.
So for our audience, our viewers, can you walk us through what the investigation have found so far in the past 12 days and what they will need to focus on from now on?
Okay. When the MH370 was first reported disappearing from the screen on March 8th, right? Yeah. And then the Malaysians reported that it might be more likely to be terrorist attacks. So yeah, many parties related to the airplane, like China, which has 153 passengers aboard, focused their efforts, the search and rescue efforts along the original flight path. That is wasting the precious time, the initial time that could have saved lots of lives. And that's it. And then after 1 week, the Malaysian government admitted that the MH370 diverted from its original path. And then all the other pieces of evidences that other parties provided has started to be interlocked, leading the final destination might be Indian Oceans. And then after 1 week from the disappearance, the Malaysian authorities looked into the background of the pilot and then searched his home. And then they found that there might be a political cause that the pilot might have sabotaged the aircraft himself. So up to now, we need to look into the Indian Ocean with no background data. That's it. That's the current status. Yeah.
Well, I heard that sharing military data would be a very sensitive issue for various nations involved, so that could be another valuable information that we might not have access to at the moment. Now, is there a possibility that all of these methods to trace the aircraft could somehow be jammed? We do have the technology these days, I believe.
Oh, yeah. If any person, like terrorists, succeed in getting all the equipment inside the aircraft himself and then turning the equipment inside the aircraft aboard, then he might be able to block all the tracking data from broadcast from the aircraft and so on. But still, flying the aircraft to that destination the terrorist wants needs a very experienced pilot. So they need a pilot, yeah.
Now, with so much difficulty finding the plane or the debris of the plane, it really is starting to sound like this could be really the case of a very highly sophisticated, calculated hijacking. Now, can you think of any other possible scenarios that could explain the disappearance of this plane?
Okay, considering all the data currently has been released up to now, it's more likely that the pilot himself might have flown the aircraft from the original path to the Indian Ocean, possibly. And then it has been reported that the pilot have tried to evade the radar tracking just after breaking off from the original path. That is, the aircraft has been following very pre-planned and then very delicate paths that to avoid all the military radar trackings. So it has been very well prepared, very well planned. And then also the Malaysian government found some evidence leading that the pilot might have been training himself at home to fly the aircraft to other places than the Beijing. Okay, and so there might be there would be virtually not much possibility other than flying the aircraft by the pilot himself or by the terrorist hijacking the airplane.
So right now we don't have all the facts. We don't have enough the dots to be connected to form a clear picture. So I guess only time will tell, and hopefully the efforts, investigation and the search efforts, it gets proceeded much more quickly and more efficiently from here on. Well, Dr. John An, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Not facing the apologize.
We're all destroyed.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Conn-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Proposal for talks on holding regular reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Their reason. In other parts of our world, the Ukrainian government is making preparations to withdraw troops from Crimea after more Ukrainian bases were taken over by Russian forces on Wednesday. Western leaders say they will slap even more sanctions on Moscow if Russian forces encroach further into eastern Ukraine. Our Shin Se-min reports.
It does not appear that the Ukrainian military will be taking a stand in Crimea. The head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council said Wednesday that plans were in motion to relocate 25,000 service personnel and families from the Crimean Peninsula. The announcement came after pro-Russian forces stormed 2 naval bases in Crimea on Wednesday night and raised the Russian flag. They're the latest in a series of takeovers by Russian troops and local self-defense forces. The attacks on the bases in Crimea come as the United States and Europe seek ways to increase pressure on Russia. Speaking from the former Soviet Republic of Lithuania Wednesday, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden declared that the U.S. was absolutely committed to defending its allies.
I want to make it clear. We stand resolutely with our Baltic allies in support of the Ukrainian people and against Russian aggression. As long as Russia continues on this dark path, they will face increasing political and economic isolation.
The Obama administration and its allies says they're working to devise new and tougher economic penalties to stop Russian President Vladimir Putin from moving forces further into Ukraine's eastern territory. UN Secretary General Pan Ki-moon is scheduled to meet with Putin in Moscow on Thursday to talk about the unfolding diplomatic crisis. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
New U.S. Federal Reserve Chief Janet Yellen has kept policies set by her predecessor Ben Bernanke on track by slashing another $10 billion from the Fed's monthly bond buying program. However, she also hinted at a rate increase which could come as soon as spring of next year. Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has this report.
U.S. Federal Reserve officials have made another $10 billion reduction in their bond-buying stimulus program as widely expected. After her first monetary policy meeting as Fed Chair Janet Yellen said Wednesday that the economy is strong enough to support continued improvement in the labor market. The program was at $85 billion a month in December, and the fresh cut will take it to $55 billion. While Yellen said that the central bank expects to keep interest rates near zero for a considerable time after the bond buying program ends this fall, she hinted that it could start raising rates next spring.
The language that we use in this statement is considerable period. This is the kind of term it's hard to define, but, probably means something on the order of around 6 months or that type of thing.
The Fed tried, however, to set the market at ease, saying it would look at a wide range of economic indicators to make a judgment on the economy's readiness for higher rates. It also said that it would no longer link its future decision to increase rates to the unemployment rate, as the jobless rate has fallen faster than expected. Despite the assurance, financial markets reacted swiftly to her comments, with U.S. stocks and government bonds falling. Market analysts say that the Fed's fresh forecasts show a shift to a more hawkish policy stance than what they had been seeing just a few months ago. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
And the stimulus tapering in the U.S. will have little to no effect on the Korean economy. That is the message out of Korea's finance ministry today. In an expected move, the U.S. Fed said Wednesday that it would be cutting bond purchases by another $10 billion starting next month. And Seoul officials said they would continue to monitor the markets closely in the event of temporary volatility from the announcement, which coincides with the sluggish growth of the Chinese economy and the crisis in Crimea. The benchmark Kospi here in Seoul fell nearly 1% on this Thursday to close out at 1919. The nation's 3 mobile carriers have promised they will stop providing customers with illegal subsidies. This comes after they were hit with tens of millions of dollars in fines on top of a minimum 45-day business suspension for providing the subsidies. Our Conn-young reports.
The first thing the nation's 3 mobile carriers promised was to root out the practice of offering subsidies to lure customers once and for all. At a joint press conference Thursday, SK Telecom, KT, and LG U+ vowed to shift their sales paradigm from one oriented around illegal subsidies to one that's service-oriented. To do that, they will work with the country's handset makers, including Samsung and LG Electronics, to lower the factory price of cell phones so that retailers will not feel the need to give subsidies to their customers, thereby igniting an unfair competition in the market. The 3 carriers also plan to launch a market monitoring team run by the 3 firms, and they will temporarily sever the network of retailers that violate regulations. Thursday's announcement comes after the 3 were put under a minimum 45-day business suspension by the ICT Ministry and the Korea Communications Commission earlier this month. The penalty was their punishment for attempting to entice customers with subsidies. This is a customary tactic in Korea's mobile telecommunications market, where mobile carriers pay a huge chunk of what a customer is supposed to pay for a mobile device. Despite the telecom companies' will to offer better services and stabilize the market, skeptics say their plan as of now is too vague and that the three are shifting responsibility to the retailers rather than fixing the problem at the source. Conn-young, Arirang News.
Well, it's been a rather gray and chilly day here in Seoul today, and for a check on the forecast, let's go over to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening. The rain clouds have been gathering all day, and finally the rain is coming down.
Well, how much rain are we looking at, and how long will it last?
Well, as the spring showers, we're only expecting between 5 to 10 millimeters of rain this evening. However, the wind is going to get even stronger into the night, making it feel colder. Now, according to the lunar calendar, tomorrow is the spring equinox, but there is a heavy snowfall advisory in effect in the mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province. Now, meanwhile, other regions can expect a sunny and warm day tomorrow. Now, going over to our temperature readings, Seoul tops out at 1 degree in the morning and gets up to 13 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will get up to 14 and 13 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island hits 11 degrees, Dokdo makes it up to 5, while Mangeumgang tops out at 2. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Conn-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and we hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.